to start with the quote today. It is health that is the real wealth and not pieces of gold and silver. And that's Mahatma Gandhi. And that is so true, right? So true. Many years later, Steve Jobs said the same thing. And he was the, CEO of Apple. So you realize that, I think, as you get older, young, you think you can get by with anything. But that's why we have you here to understand diabetes and preventing and reversing diabetes. For everyone who doesn't know Ruchika Behal, she's a national board certified health coach. And she is also an essential oil educator, a nutritional therapist, and detox specialist. It is her mission to simplify getting healthy and staying healthy. And I give her kudos because I'm one of her clients and I love her. She really does keep you on track. So
thank you, Lela. Thank you so much. I'm actually very passionate about doing what I do. We feel that getting healthy, staying healthy is super complicated. We somehow make it very complicated, but it's the daily little things that we do. And it can be very simple. And I'm hoping that's what you're listening for, everyone who's joined us. If diabetes is a topic that is of interest to you, if you know somebody, if you have a family history, a genetic predisposition to a disease name like that, I'm hoping you are here not multitasking and taking notes. So just turn off the distractions because I really intend giving some simple, actionable, practical steps at the end of today.
Yeah, that's what we all need, something we can do in everyday life, right?
Yeah.
So why is diabetes a big deal? Is it truly as concerning as it is made out to be?
So it's interesting we talk about diabetes today. The official name for type 2 diabetes, we are really referring to type 2 diabetes. There are different types of diabetes. So we are referring to type 2 diabetes, which is more like a lifestyle created disorder. It's interesting we talk about it today because the official name for type 2 diabetes is diabetes mellitus. And mellitus is a Latin word that translates into sweet.
Oh.
So on the eve of Halloween, where the candy kickoff happens, it's interesting we talk about that.
But it's also the beginning of
it is the beginning of the holiday season. So that's what I say, right? Like Halloween starts and then there's one celebration, one festivity after another, and it doesn't end. And then suddenly you wake up in the new year and you kind of go like, where did last year go?
Yes,
so yeah, it is a big deal for a couple of reasons. Number one, it is becoming an epidemic. Back in about 2001, it was about 3% people were diagnosed with diabetes. Today we are pre-diabetes, we are at a 45% today. So that number is just increasing. So you're really looking at very high numbers. And the sad part is that diabetes, before the diagnosis, there's about 10-15 years before that changes start happening. So it starts with insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, before full-blown diabetes gets diagnosed. So you literally have a heads up, which is a good thing, but you have to respond to it. The second reason why diabetes is truly a big deal is, number one, that it impacts every part of your body. We think of it as a blood sugar issue, but when the sugar saturates your blood's not able to flow. There are circulatory issues, your eyes get damaged, the kidney issues, heart issues, everything in the body gets impacted.
Oh, wow.
Because our blood vessels are designed to carry a certain viscosity of the blood.
Okay.
If you dissolve sugar into anything, if you make it like honey-like texture, the viscosity changes, right? It doesn't flow through the blood vessels as efficiently. So people have hypertension. To start with, people have arterial issues, cardiovascular risk increases, stroke, all of that. So it really impacts every organ in the body. That's another reason. And the third reason, which I think I'll give it as an analogy, is that a stable blood sugar keeps you healthier inside out. And I'm not talking about how you look physically. I'm really talking about cellular aging. So let me give you an analogy. We have cars driving on the road. If you were to quickly accelerate and then press hard on the brake and you kept doing that, it ages the car machinery, right? The engines will, the brake systems, everything will start deteriorating. And the same thing happens in our bodies. When we have this sugar that goes up and comes down quickly, the spikes and dips start aging the body very quickly. So the more sugar spikes and dips you have during a day, So this is for everyone, because if we can keep our blood sugar stable through the day, whether you're diagnosed with a disease, whether you feel you have a predisposition to it or not, you can really prevent premature aging.
Oh wow, I'm sure that interests a lot of people.
Yeah, and I don't talk of premature aging from an aesthetic perspective, but really from an organ,
right?
just feeling vital every morning. To your point, right? Health is your biggest wealth. Just feeling vital every morning, not waking up with that post-nasal drip, or not waking up feeling stiff in your joint.
Because sometimes you feel like you've slept 10 hours, but you're still not awake. You've not gotten your rest.
Totally.
Yes, absolutely. And I love the analogy you use. It's easy to understand. You mentioned insulin resistance, and that's how diabetes begins. Can you elaborate a bit? What are the symptoms of insulin resistance?
So yeah, I would really like everyone to understand that insulin resistance is really the first step when you are getting on the path of type 2 diabetes. So which is a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it gives you a good heads up. And if you're able to respond in time, you can totally prevent and reverse from that disease from happening.
Okay.
So again, I think I explained the best in analogy. So let me explain this in an analogy. When we eat something that gets broken down into sugar and that gets into the blood, then the body we get a trigger from our pancreas to release insulin, which will carry this glucose or sugar into the cells to convert it into energy.
Okay.
That is the process of how we eat and how it gets into our cells, very simplistically put.
Yeah.
Now, what happens is if you're constantly eating, or if you're eating foods with a high glycemic load, or a lot of processed foods, a lot of sugars, and I don't just mean simple sugars, I just don't mean candies. You have this constant demand on the pancreas to keep releasing the insulin to carry this energy into the cells. Our need for energy consumption is not that high, right? You're not consuming it. So eventually the cells become saturated. And they are no longer willing to open up to this insulin to bring in this energy. So of course it triggers the liver to store some as fat and the muscles to store it as energy. But eventually, because the demand of energy is not so high, we do lead sedentary lifestyles. We are not physically active so much, and our consumption is too much. The body becomes resistant. So insulin resistance is the official name, but it's like, imagine if you have an empty suitcase and you're putting in some clothes, you can fit it in. The same thing, your insulin can bring in, when your cells are empty, the glucose, the sugars into the cells. But when the suitcase is super full, those last 2 t-shirts don't fill either, right? You have to literally jam it down. And you can, and same thing starts happening to the cells. It can no longer hold on or consume that sugar. So that stage is called insulin resistance, but that's when kind of there is presence of higher blood glucose in your, the sugars in your blood. And again, blood glucose levels, when they are elevated, they are toxic to the body. They create inflammation. They create inflammaging. So inflammation along with aging of the cells, because circulation is not happening as it's designed to. So yeah, that's when it all starts kind of going downhill. The second stage is pre-diabetes, which is sometimes diagnosable, which is your morning blood sugar, fasting blood sugars will measure over 100. That is already being pre-diabetic. Your hemoglobin A1C will start kind of creeping up slowly. So that's when it's before there's a full-blown diagnosis of diabetes. And I think it's important to kind of understand these stages, because it gives you the opportunity, to your point, to prevent it.
Yes, because sometimes you read these numbers and then the doctor is like, oh, you're borderline, and then you're like, oh yeah, I'm not there yet, I'm not over the hill, so I can do what I want.
Totally.
Yeah, but that's when you start taking control of things, right?
Would you like me to share some signs that people can see that they could potentially have insulin resistance? They're super common signs. So of course you have higher than normal blood sugar levels, so you're kind of measuring over 100. Your triglycerides start getting higher, about over 150. LDL cholesterol starts rising. For males, the waistline is larger than 40 inches, and for females it's larger than 35 inches. Another common symptom or sign is that there's darkening of the skin in certain areas, especially behind the neck, in the folds. The skin starts kind of getting tougher and starts becoming darker, or there's presence of a lot of skin tags. These are very subtle signs. We don't think of them as signs of insulin resistance, but that's kind of where it's all showing up from. So it's important to kind of take a look at your body and just take every symptom, every change as a gift and acknowledge it and question why is it happening.
And take it as a wake-up call, right?
Absolutely.
So is type 2 diabetes reversible and preventable?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. It is totally preventable. It's really a lifestyle disorder. We often think of it as, as this sad diagnosis, like a one-way street. There's no way.
And genetic, right? Sometimes.
Yeah, there is a genetic composition, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But the thing is that with type 2 diabetes, there's just so much, because it's a slow progression. You have so many different moments when you can do something about it. Just changing your diet, how you manage stress, what you eat, when you eat, can all really help with preventing the disease. It's not a life sentence. And the same thing with reversing as well. Now, reversing always is hard. It takes more commitment. That's always true. But we have to also remember the time that it takes you to get to that point. Potentially it'll take at least half that time to get back. People think that reversal should be this overnight magic pill, and it never is. It is a lifestyle overall, because if a certain lifestyle or certain way of eating or certain way of leading your everyday life has created disease in your body, you will need to change it.
And but I know you can do it because I've done it.
Totally.
And I am a total bread person. Like my mom would make fun of me and say you need to get married to a baker, because I love bread and cookies, and I had to give it up this May, and I've actually been off it. Knock on wood, and it was hard, but like you said, if you put and it is true, when you put your mind to something and you make up your mind that you're not going to do it, and you know that it's not helping your body, what do you want, right? So you can do it.
And I always give this, again, I'm an analogy person. If you're going on 59 and every day you get stuck in traffic, you have to change something. Either you change the time that you travel, maybe you take another route, maybe you take the feeder. But if every day you're getting stuck in traffic and complaining about it, something has to change. Something has to change.
Like you had put the quote on Instagram, right? If things are not changing,
something has to change for something to change,
you
right?
Keep doing the same things and expect
different results.
So see,
you're there. You are there. So it is preventable and reversible. There are many things that you can do about it. But I think I would love to share 3 to 4 different health markers that I think everyone can keep track of. The number one is your hemoglobin A1C, which is your average of 3 months blood glucose levels. I think just kind of measure it. Ideally, keep it under 5.2. I know I'm going to get a lot of grief for saying that, but truly try and keep it under 5.2. Then also have your fasting insulin levels measured. You want them to be in single digits between 2 and 5. This is a lab marker that's not often checked, but it can give you a heads up so many years ahead of time. Then, of course, is your regular fasting glucose, which is your overnight marker that people may often do it at home with their prick test. Measure your triglycerides and your triglycerides to HDL ratio. These are some preventive markers that can give you a good heads up of which direction your life's moving in, so you can change something. It's treated like your GPS, right? Like when you get a heads up, there's traffic, you don't decide to take the same road that day. So.
Absolutely. So is it a fact that it's caused by too much sugar?
I wish I could simply answer yes. I would just make it easy. It is. The answer is yes, but there's another part to it. And I think that another part, more and more people and more practitioners are realizing as we're kind of progressing. I did a personal experiment that I'll share with you in a bit. So yes, the answer is higher glycemic index foods that get processed into sugar very quickly into the body do raise your blood glucose levels, and by that we went through the whole dynamic how the insulin has to be produced by the pancreas, and that insulin draws the glucose, the sugars into the cells. So yes, the answer is yes. But there's another way that our blood glucose increases. And this is something that we often don't think about. And I'll share a personal experiment that I did. That is stress. And I'm not talking about the big stressors in our lives. I'm talking about being stuck in traffic, somebody cutting you in traffic, running late for a meeting, getting late for your kids' pickup, running late for a random social event. These little things that stress us, it could also be physical stressors sometimes. It could also be chemical stressors in terms of toxins. But every time we are stressed, our body gets into what's called a fight or flight response.
Yes.
And a part of that, the survival mechanism, is to demand more energy from the body.
Okay.
When we are in a fight or flight response state, the body demands more energy. Now, the extra energy was stored in your muscles and your liver, so the body starts releasing that in the form of sugar, because to survive, the body is saying you need more energy to run away to survive this situation, and that increases your blood glucose level as well.
Oh, wow.
And I did this experiment that I was eating very even. So I put on a continuous glucose monitor. It's like a insert that you just kind of put it on. You could put it in different parts of your body. I put it on my arm. And I was eating a very stable meal for 7 days. But I would realize my glucose, I would still have spikes depending on if I was running late, sending some stuff to anybody, or I'm like kind of looking at time between two appointments and I'm going like, this client's running late or I'm running late. The little things that we experience every day, like, it's no big deal.
Right. But
it would start showing a very severe spike and dip. And that kind of gives you a good insight into how our body responds to stress.
Oh, wow.
So yes, the answer is diabetes is a blood sugar related disorder, like, higher blood sugar, higher glucose diets, higher sugar, glycemic foods do causes, but also stress. So, and stress can come from even lack of sleep.
Yeah, major, right?
Major.
Because that's when your body is healing,
resting.
So,
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So is type 2 diabetes hereditary?
Yes and no. So, genetics do play a role in how our insulin is produced in the body and how body consumes certain things. So insulin sensitivity to our cells is kind of genetic. But again, an analogy, and I know it can be a very sensitive analogy that I give, but I don't have another way to explain this, is that genes load the gun.
Okay.
And the environment pulls the trigger.
Nice.
So you could be sitting with a loaded gun all your life. You could have a predisposition to it, but unless you give your body that environment, meaning your foods, how you process stress, how you prioritize self-care, how you move your body, how much exposure to toxins, when it all comes together, that's when it gets expressed as a disease. Another reason often people think of these as genetic conditions is because, they think they inherited it. It's almost disempowering to say that, like it's genetic.
Right.
I can't do nothing about it.
Yeah.
So if you remember that you could have a loaded weapon sitting, but nothing will express if you can change your environment. Often genes, as much as genes run in the family, patterns also run in the family.
Yes, absolutely.
We do exactly what our parents do, whether it's raising our kids, how we process stress, how we prioritize self-care, how we eat when we are stressed. It often comes from our families.
Yes.
So you have to break your patterns for genetic conditions not to express.
That makes
Long answer to your short question, but hopefully it kind of makes sense.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back after our break on 103.5 Hum FM. Welcome, Houston, to Chai Time on 103.5 Hum FM. We are in conversation with Ruchika about diabetes and we're loving it. So what are simple ways to manage your blood sugar levels?
Let me give you the simplest way without having to change any food. Would you love me then?
Yes.
So let me tell you that actually if you eat, and these are studies and experiments done, that if you eat the ingredients of what you're going to eat in a certain order, without changing anything. You could be eating your tiramisu,
Yeah.
but if you eat it in a certain sequence in your meal, you can reduce your blood glucose spike by 75%.
Really? Like, so what do you mean? So you eat it first?
So no, you don't eat it first.
I love my sugar.
I know.
That's
So you
the
basically start with your veggies. So you start with a bowl of salad, raw veggies, cooked veggies, but you really start with your veggies.
Okay.
And then you do your proteins and fats, and then you do your carbs and sugars last.
Okay.
And how, in a desi meal, like if you were going to even, let's say, eat rajma rice, which can be like a lot of rice, right? So eat a raw salad
First.
then eat your beans, and then kind of eat the beans and the rice together.
Oh.
So just sequencing it can change it, change the spike completely.
That's amazing.
That's one. I mean, this is really keeping it simple.
That doesn't mean that you go off at your dessert.
I mean, but if you're going to, let's say, enjoy a dessert, kind of do it in the sequence
Right.
to just have the blood sugar be better managed.
Yeah.
So this
I'm
is
just thinking even for kids, because my kids love sugar now.
so do the veggies
Yeah,
first. Do the
exactly.
veggies first, protein
Have that at
fats,
every
and
meal.
yeah, definitely. So start with your veggies first. The other couple of ways is that which is the true science as well, which is really keeping your glycemic index low. And what glycemic index is the impact of a food on your sugar levels. So when you consume something, how much does your blood sugar raise?
Yeah.
The more processed the food, the more it'll rise. So let's say your breads, croissants, muffins, donuts, ice creams, these are more processed foods, right? They will make your glucose rise very quickly. And remember the car analogy, the more rise and dips we have, and the rise can feel super energetic and the dips can feel like that afternoon slump, the more the body ages and the more closer you're getting to pre-diabetes, diabetes path. So really keeping your glycemic index low, and the couple of ways you can do is a lot of foods also today carry, it'll say GI, it'll say a number like that, a lot of GI index, it'll say that often. But the other ways is the less processed the food, the lower the GI index. So, your whole foods, your vegetables, they'll be the lowest glycemic. The more processed it gets, the higher it gets. So under 55 is considered a low glycemic load food.
Okay.
Under 55.
But I realized, like, even eating veggies, like you had told me just to saute it, and the days I do it, I crave less sugar. I guess something adjusts in your body, right?
Yeah, and you often crave sugar. We were talking about stress. So one mechanism that stress kind of wants us to eat more is also when we are super stressed. Feeding ourselves with sugar becomes this one easy coping mechanism. And the same thing happens when you have a more balanced sugar, when you have highs and lows that are a little less curvy, you don't have these energy crashes. But when your energy crashes, you want instant energy.
Right.
And sugar we translate into instant energy. So veggies will keep your blood sugar very stable. You will have that usual highs and spikes and dips, but nothing unusual. So because your energy is stable, you're not craving more instant energy, sugar-rich foods.
That's why.
So the more whole you eat, the more unprocessed you eat, naturally your sugar cravings will start diminishing. One, by this mechanism, but second, also it starts changing your gut bacteria. More whole foods change your gut bacteria. The more diverse your gut bacteria, the unhealthier the gut bacteria, the more the sugar cravings.
Okay, so that's one.
So your unhealthy gut pathogenic bacteria like Candida, yeast, they all thrive on sugar. They want you to eat the sugar.
Yeah.
So people think it's lack of willpower, lack of motivation, but it's actually your gut speaking.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
So, yeah.
So that leads us to what's the best diet?
There are leaders in functional medicine, integrative medicine space who have followed the ketotarian diet, like Dr. Will Cole. Dr. Mark Hyman does the vegan diet, which is a mix of a paleo and a vegan kind of a diet. Then there are leaders who've done a pure vegan diet. There's Dr. Funk, who's reversed diabetes. I mean, they've done different diets. So honestly, we can argue endlessly about which is the right diet.
Right.
We could literally fight about it. but the one thing true to all diets is they work for some people, but they don't work for others.
Yeah.
So instead of calling what's the best diet, which diet should I follow, I always tell people create a food philosophy.
Okay.
And what that would be, it's a general rule of the foods you will include.
Okay.
Rather than arguing, fighting, this is my diet, that's my diet. Number one, your food should be not creating inflammation in your body.
Yes.
That's your number one rule, right?
Yeah.
At least not creating inflammation, and at most reducing inflammation. So it should either be anti-inflammatory, but at the least not creating more inflammation. You can't be putting poison in your body.
And I was listening to something and it said there cannot be an in-between.
There's no
it's
in-between.
either creating inflammation or it's not.
No,
So you know which it is now.
Yeah.
If you decide to make it otherwise, that's
Correct.
it. But yeah.
And again, balance it out, right? So that's number one thing, that you can be putting poison in your body knowingly on a daily basis.
Right.
Even if you did choose to be aware and kind of do other things to counteract that, use it as an antidote of the poison. So number one, food should not create inflammation.
Yeah.
Number two, foods should bring in the nutrients, the diverse nutrients that our body needs for different biochemical processes.
Okay.
Our body does not have a pantry.
Yeah.
So you have to really bring in the nutrients on a daily basis. And the more whole the diet, the more diverse the nutrients. That's the second part of food philosophy. The third part is that you have to focus on the macronutrient protein. It is important for rebuilding, repairing the body. We have different macronutrients, carbs, fats, and proteins. We somehow manage to get the carbs through various sources. Proteins is the one that most people lack in.
Yeah.
So just becoming more mindful of a good quality protein at every meal. The fourth thing that would be important in a good diet would be that you're able to digest and absorb it. What use is it to eat like this elaborate, amazing diet that gives you a belly bloat or you don't feel good after eating?
Yeah.
So you have to either work on your digestion or look at foods that you're able to digest and absorb nutrients out of.
Yeah, absolutely.
And last not but the least, a diet has to be sustainable. It has to be enjoyable. It has to be pleasurable. You should be able to afford it in the long run.
Absolutely.
So either you change your mindset or you find something that works for you in the long run, because honestly, there's trying to do something for a short run as a sprint when we are working with a lifestyle disease that's created over a long period of time. Just the timeline in diabetes is like, before you get diagnosed with diabetes, about 10 to 13 years before that, there is insulin resistance happening. About another 5 to 7 years before that, there's some non-alcoholic fatty liver disease happening. Fatty liver disease you may have heard of. So these changes are happening. And when you really get diagnosed with diabetes, it potentially could be about a 10 to 15 year difference. So the diet that'll work will be sustainable. You'll have to make a lifestyle food change.
Lifestyle change, I think.
Totally. You have to enjoy.
And like you said, mindset. And I remember when I came to you, I was like, oh yeah, there's these things in India where they have the special places and they're like, put you on a separate diet and you get better and things like that. And you had told me it's like it has to be sustainable. So you come back and you're back in the same routine, and if you're not eating the right foods when you're here, what does it matter, right?
Absolutely.
So you have to adjust to where you are and
Totally, I agree with that, because people move away, and sometimes those retreats are a great idea because again, when you're
to get a reset.
To get a reset, I think it's a great idea. But if you can pick up the practices and bring them and convert them into practices in your real life, only then it's a point, because that reset will only do you good for a short period of time.
Yes.
So yeah, you should be able to translate into action in your real life. That's not going away.
What are some natural holistic approaches do you recommend for preventive diabetes, especially type 2, especially if you're already pre-diabetic?
So if you're already pre-diabetic, I think the number one thing would be to keep a very careful watch on your hemoglobin A1C and your fasting insulin.
Okay.
Like track it. Do not think of it as diabetes is not a moment in time. And I know I'm repeating it again. It's not like a broken bone. It didn't exist yesterday and it exists today. It's not like that. Okay. It's building over a period of time. Pre-diabetes is a stage of diabetes. So if the numbers are, if what I'm saying is accurate in terms of statistics, it's kind of estimated to be a 45% diagnosis of prediabetes right now. So, which is almost close to, half the population. You want to monitor your hemoglobin A1C, your fasting glucose, as well as your fasting insulin on a regular basis. Like no running away from that. The other thing which I think everybody could benefit from is getting a continuous glucose monitor. So request your doctor to get your continuous glucose monitor. There are out of insurance plans as well. So if your doctor doesn't completely agree with it, find a doctor that believes in lifestyle changes. Because you can have just a medicine approach to a lifestyle disorder. But you can really, there are off the shelf different continuous glucose monitors. And what a continuous glucose monitor is, continuously monitors your glucose level, how you respond to certain foods, how you respond to stress. And the beauty of it is you can truly create a personalized nutrition plan. Because if you came to a nutritionist or you came to a functional practitioner like me and you said, create me a plan, maybe I will go low on certain rice types or maybe certain different processed foods, but maybe you respond okay to it. So you can really create a personalized nutrition plan for yourself. Those are the two top ones. I mean, apart from that is very simple things. Obviously, manage your glycemic index. We spoke about it. Try and eat more whole, real foods. Eat in the sequence that we spoke about, including certain supplements like magnesium, berberine, chromium are known to improve insulin sensitivity and better manage blood sugar in the body. You could speak to your practitioner, learn more about it, how to include those. Now, obviously, I'm not suggesting you just go buy it off the shelf right now, but just know that options exist. There are a lot of essential oils that can work in helping you manage blood sugar levels. That's another thing. Walking after all your meals. If you can utilize the extra glucose, the sugars that is in the body, by the way of walking, because muscles, your quads, which is your largest muscles in the body, utilize glucose, you will also have a more stable blood sugar response. That's like another simple one. So again, going back to the food and the stress, but in addition, movement. It's important. And 5-10 minutes of movement after a meal. I have had clients who wear a continuous glucose monitor and they've seen a 50-point decrease in their glucose levels just by sheer walking for 10 minutes.
Really? That's why I guess our parents always say
walk after dinner.
Right?
After dinner, right? Don't just sit down.
They
don't just sit down. Just don't finish your meal and go plunk yourself on a couch.
So
eat 3 to 4 hours earlier than bedtime. And when I say eat, I don't mean your dinner, I mean your last bite. Because I started clarifying that, because after dinner there are a few more last bites, right?
So what about the common medications for diabetes and how effective are they?
So, of course, there's time and place for medication. As I said, this is a lifestyle disorder. We need to address it by changing the lifestyle. What the medication do, the most common medication, typically metformin type medication that most people are on, what it typically does is that we were speaking of the suitcase analogy, right? Trying to stuff that last t-shirt in. It's basically trying to get glucose into an already crammed cell. There is no place. So what it starts doing is it starts hiding glucose another place. So it's like, instead of cleaning your room, instead of putting the trash away, you put it under your bed. And then when under the bed gets full, then you put it inside the closet. And then after that, you put it in another corner. You haven't addressed the problem, right? That trash is going to rot and become a breeding ground for pathogens, bacteria. Similarly, most medications are not removing the glucose. They are just trying to shove it somewhere. There is no, beyond a point, there is no somewhere in the body. So that's kind of, you have to address the lifestyle. It is a lifestyle created disorder. You have to bring in the lifestyle component to it. And the other downside is that long term, which I would like everyone to know, especially if you're on drugs like metformin, those do deplete certain nutrients from your body, specifically vitamin B12. And people take it endlessly for years together without realizing it. There's neuropathy happening, there's lower moods happening, constant fatigue happening. constant fatigue, they want to eat more. They want to eat more, there's more glucose. So you never get out of that viciousness. I'll also talk about the trendier drug Ozempic. Everyone's interested in it these days. So again, despite the trendiness, you have to understand there are side effects to it. You really need to work very closely with a practitioner. But again, unless you change your lifestyle, those drugs are not going to prove magical. Short term, maybe they can help you overcome that initial challenge of making a shift, but eventually you have to bring in your lifestyle component. How you eat, how you move your body, how you prioritize sleep, how you relax on a daily basis,
how you manage stress.
And stress you can't remove, but you just have to have small daily, I always say, manage stress or prioritize relaxation as often as you brush your teeth. So which is hopefully twice a day. At least once a day. At least once a day. So whether it's journaling, taking a break in nature, deep breathing, doing some yoga, stretching, pranayam, whatever that might mean for you.
Yeah.
It could just be even taking out some essential oils and doing a little bit of aromatherapy for yourself. Anything that helps you move from a sympathetic dominant state, that fight or flight mode, into a parasympathetic state is going to be helpful.
Yes, absolutely.
It just regulates your nervous system, and that's what is needed. It's not complicated. You don't have to sit like a sage on a mountaintop it's not happening. None of us are going to achieve that. I don't know if anyone here is achieving that. But the fact is that that's not the aim.
And then you don't have time for it. You think in your head you have to sit like that, but like you said, while you're driving, like 2 minutes of deep breathing,
you can do it,
because there are times you're just getting from one place to another on an auto mode. You don't even know how you got there.
Absolutely.
So like you said,
so I think very two simple takeaways would be a lower glycemic load diet, just managing that, and finding ways to switch between of the fight or flight and getting into a more parasympathetic state, which is your rest and digest. Don't get me wrong, stress is a good thing. It gets us to places in time, it gets us to perform, it gets us to get work done. Basically, none of us would reach anywhere in time if we weren't stressed. So it's a good thing. But being constantly in that driven state, in that fight or flight mode, does not serve us.
Yes, absolutely. So, would you like to share anything else with us? I can't believe we're at the end of the show.
I know you always ask me for a quote at the end of it, right? So I'm going to share one of my favorite quotes, which I think is very appropriate in the conversation that we are having today, is that the best time to dig a well is not when you're thirsty.
That is so true. I love it.
So just with that, the best time to take care of your health was yesterday. The second best time is now. No matter where you are in your journey, everything that I'm sharing with you today, I can tell you 9 out of 10 people will be impacted in one way or the other by irregularities in blood sugar, whether it's another sort of metabolic dysfunction, meaning hypertension, higher cholesterol levels, higher waist circumference, or higher blood sugar levels. That the statistics are right now, only 4% of people in the United States do not have any of these 4 markers out of range.
Oh wow, that number is...
So it's 96 point some percent that have one of these out of range. So whoever you are, wherever you're listening from, definitely do something with the information we've shared. Lower glycemic foods, walk after your meals, find a sustainable diet, and then last not but the least, find tools to help you relax on a daily basis.
Yes. Thank you so much, Ruchika. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's been a busy week for you, so we really appreciate it. And thank you, our listeners, for joining us on 103.5 Hum FM, and we'll see you next Monday, same time, same place.